People have been talking about sort of a fair deal for Alberta, going back to the firewall, talking about change, equalization shifts, all of this good stuff. But it feels like for the first time, even tonight, John Charest himself talking about a new sort of deal for Alberta. Does it seem for the first time in maybe a long time that we're not talking academically or theoretically, but there's change on the front for Alberta?
Completely. I think the fact that you've got a major federal leadership candidate recognizing we need an Alberta Accord, that shows that we've broken through on the message that Albertans, for as far as we're concerned, enough is enough. We've been pushed around too far. We've been taken for granted. You can't shut down our wealth generation and then also keep on asking us to fund the rest of the country through equalization to the share that we are, as well as interfering in the way that we deliver our programs. Enough is enough. So I think that the fact that we're now having this conversation allows us to reset the relationship with the country. We've been growing in economic clout and growing in population for a number of years now. At some point in the not too distant future, we're going to be the second largest economy and the second most populous province, and we need to be treated like a senior partner.
Adam So's here for Rebel News, and we are on location at the Petroleum Club here in Calgary for the Western Standards Federal Leadership Debate for the Conservative Party of Canada. We've got a big team in force here. Even our fearless leader, Ezra Levant, is on the grounds. We've got many people who are going to be asking questions about the federal leadership race, but there's inevitably some overlap between provincial and federal politics, and we are no doubt going to get some people with strong opinions on the leadership race for the United Conservative Party. So we're going to be focusing on that question tonight. Well, we are now joined by the man behind this event, Fildebrandt of the Western Standard. How difficult was it to put this together, to get these people going? I know we've seen a couple of debates, people backing out, a few people backing out here. What was the undertaking like?
Herding cats. I love politics, but God, I hate politicians. They can be difficult. We had wanted to debate with everyone here. Obviously, the Pulliver campaign declined. I think it's just because they have a front-runner status and probably didn't want to expose themselves to that kind of risk. I mean, this kind of off-the-cuff thing is perhaps, you can get in trouble. You can say something you shouldn't. But we kind of had to. Actually, I'll tell you right now, we've actually changed the format up because Patrick Brown, got disqualified just Wednesday, a couple days ago. Yeah. So we're actually going to be changing the format to more of a fireside chat. I wanted a debate where these guys want to rip each other's hair out and see some calf roping on stage. Yeah. Not going to happen. So we're going to more of a fireside chat format, kind of get into kind of a long form interview with it. I'm going to kind of do my best, channel my best Joe Rogan right now, and try to really dive into the issues the way you're not going to normally get in a normal kind of soundbite interview. Yeah. So my goal here is to help Western members of the Conservative Party of Canada make a good critical decision of candidates based on what they're going to do for Westerners. The Conservative Party, like national parties, tends to be national issues and Quebec issues. Quebec gets its own debate effectively because there's a French debate, and that's all about Quebec 99%. There's no Western debate. We're 4 of 6 provinces in this country, and we pay the bills around here, and we get mostly negative attention, not positive. So we want to get some positive attention, get candidates on the record on Western issues, and I think I'm hopeful we'll achieve that today.
Well, I think it'll be good. We saw sort of very superficial questions at some of the leadership debates, like what Netflix series are you binging, all that sort of stuff. So I'm happy to hear that there'll be some in-depth conversations here. Are you concerned with some candidates backing out? We saw Aaron O'Toole, Andrew Scheer often criticized for backing away from questions, not advocating conservative values. Alison Redford, very much the same thing. Even Jason Kenney towards the end, shying away from answering questions directly. Are you concerned that the leadership candidates, both provincially to some extent and federally as well, are shying away from media and shying away from sharing their ideas?
Well, I think a lot of them have been shy of media, but shy of independent media in particular. I think that is less. I mean, even Pierre Pulliver, who's not here today, has been pretty good about sitting down with my reporters and on the Corey Morgan show, things like that. So they're talking. I think the lack of some candidates here today is the debate is particularly risky. You're opened up to attack. Also, the questions are not going to be regular debate questions that you'd get with, Global or CTV or one of the mainstream guys. You're going to get, they put questions to these guys that they think they're more or less general election questions. No, we're asking questions among the conservative electorate. Why should conservatives vote for you? Not why should someone in downtown Toronto vote for you? And that, that could skew things a bit to the right, and they might be afraid of getting pushed in that direction. But a lot of the candidates, I don't know. We've found even in the UCP in Alberta, they've been fairly good when talking, at least with the Western Standard. I think they've I think it is changing in terms of the openness to independent media. They're realizing that the gatekeepers of the legacy media are no longer the be-all and end-all. They don't have the prestige they used to. And the independent media is really professionalizing in Canada. It's not just a couple of ragtag bloggers anymore. It's really professionalizing. It's competitive. There's a number of us. So I think that's changing.
So joined by a man who needs no introduction, Drew Barnes, MLA for Cypress Medicine Hat. First off, what was your sort of impression of the night? Did anyone really stand out as a surprise performance?
Well, Adam, thank you for interviewing me. Nice to see you too. I'll say first of all that I was very, very pleased with Roman at the end and his absolute commitment to ending equalization, to enhancing resource movement for Albertans. Certainly he talked about doing something about the inequities in the House of Commons and the Senate. Jean Charest talked about some of that too. So that was great. Mr. Atchison had a more, hey, I'm a down-to-earth, I'm a grassroots kind of guy, and that's something I think Albertans want to hear. But at the end of the day, Cypress Medicine Hat constituents, Albertans I talked to, are tired of the talk. They want some action. They want to see Ottawa held accountable for our lack of resource movement here in Alberta, our lack of opportunity. I mean, some of the things they didn't address, if I could go there, they talked about how Ottawa overreached during the pandemic, but all this money that Ottawa and Trudeau printed kept the strings tight on what Alberta and other provinces could do. I want to hear some of these guys talk about that and make a commitment to a smaller federal government and stronger provinces.
Obviously, the emphasis here is very much federal, but we're also facing a provincial leadership race for the United Conservative Party. Quite a few folks since we last spoke on this matter have thrown their hats into the race. How much of an overlap do you think there is? Is there certain groups that are maybe supporting one candidate federally and then provincially? What's your sort of vibe? And do you think there's a front runner or two emerging among the leaders?
Well, thank you. I guess I'll start with my concern. My concern with the UCP leadership race today is the influence that Ottawa has on it again. Did I not hear that Rona Ambrose stepped into it today in some capacity? We've seen Jim Prentice, we've seen Brian Jean, we saw Jason Kenney come back, and none of that has worked out. So Albertans and UCP member, when it's time to vote, let's focus on Albertans who have our communities and our families and our best interests at heart. Secondly, overlap. Jean Charest, who was viewed as not friendly to Alberta, not with Alberta's best interest at heart, and some baggage about being a former Liberal Premier of Quebec, came out yesterday with an Alberta agenda saying he's going to change equalization, and address some of the things that are important to Alberta, like us being more independent in our CPP. So, hey, I think, Alberta's having some measurement on this. Let's hope for effectiveness in a very turmoil time, in a very turmoil world. But Alberta, we've always punched above our weight economically. It's time that we punched above our weight politically as well.
And do you think that there is maybe a couple candidates among the UCP leadership hopefuls that, not asking for an official endorsement here, but are likely going to be advocating for Alberta more strongly or with a less sort of compromising fashion? Some candidates maybe being accused of being a little bit safe, a little bit reminiscent of Jason Kenney.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think, was there only 3 of them that supported the Alberta Sovereignty Act that Danielle Smith put out there? Danielle, Todd Lowen, and the third was Bill Rock, the mayor from Amisk. So there's 3 of them that are saying, I'm going to do something to make Canada aware how seriously this Constitution has to be changed for Albertans to feel like we're an equal part of Canada. So I give those 3 credit for addressing that. The race, I think it's you have to have your ballot in the mail by September 3rd to get to vote by October 6th. So the others have a chance to show that they are going to stand up for Alberta first, but especially in actions, way more than words. So I think it's good in a lot of ways that the 2 races are going on at one time, and I think it's good that Albertans, that we need to talk about resource movement, ending equalization, and doing those things that we can do on our own to make us stronger. Collecting our own taxes, running our own immigration, handling our own pension program. Let's do what it takes to make sure that Ottawa has the chance to give us a fair deal, and then if they don't, let's hold them accountable.
Speaking of segregating people, Tamara Leach was hauled away and arrested ultimately for taking a photo with a political opponent of Justin Trudeau. What do you make of the authoritarian trend in judicial processes as of late in Canada, particularly in the case of Tamara Leach?
So I think it's no secret that I'm a very big supporter of the freedom movement and the truckers movement. I believe that if there was any discussion of any unlawful conduct, then that could have been properly subjected to municipal bylaws or Highway Traffic Act. However, recognizing that I'm a member of the bar, I'm not allowed to criticize the judicial process. I have to presume that it is fair and independent, and I will remain as such. I will not comment on an individual case, on a criminal case that is before the court for adjudication.
So then, broadly speaking, would you say, though, that you do have concerns about some of the prosecution without getting into a specific case?
I would say that, look, I'm a very big proponent of the rule of law. When the rule of law is out the window, then and when our democracy is at risk, you can't really have certainty in law or in anything, whether it's the economy or anything else. And so I think that it's very, very important that we have confidence in our institutions. And that would mean that I'd have very, very difficult time believing that anyone could be regarded differently before the law because of their political views or political activity. I'm not speaking about Ms. Litch in particular. I'm saying generally. And regretfully, if we've seen any erosion of the rule of law that's coming out of Ottawa, primarily starting with the unlawful, in my view, invocation of the Emergencies Act, I'll leave it at that.
Would you rehire public service workers who were fired over vaccine mandates and bring them back and give them back pay?
Well, I would certainly recognize that if we're going to have a public service that's going to work in this environment, much as Quebec did. I mean, I thought that was a very telling episode. You end up, and they were very firm. You may not have, they were in the news every day saying, this is, you're out of a job. If by this date we're not back, and then full stop, they said, we're not going to do it because we can't perform, we can't allow ourselves to lose these people. And maybe there's other things we can do as tests. I think there's other alternatives, and that we should apply the other alternatives.
And so would you personally advocate for bringing them back and giving them back pay?
I would advocate that everyone should be following, the best practices for healthcare, and I argue that, I ask people to do that, but at the end of the day, we have to apply our judgment and ask ourselves, what is it that we can do that makes common sense as opposed to just applying blanket policy that is going to be to the final detriment of Canadian taxpayers.
We're obviously at a debate for the federal leadership, but we've actually, seeing as we have so many people here, I've been taking some time to talk to people about provincial leadership. And you are probably eminently qualified to speak on that matter because you are at the forefront of that conversation as a candidate yourself for the leadership. I've been asking people here what they think is the primary issue, the first matter that Alberta needs to address, what a candidate who's likely to win in Alberta is going to tackle as their first issue if elected. Danielle Smith, what would you do if elected leader first?
I wish there was, I'm going to give you two because they're equally important, and it also depends on what Ottawa does. I guess both of them center around Ottawa. I think Ottawa's going to try to bring through vaccine mandates. They're going to try to force us to have jabs every 9 months, and we've got to draw a hard line and say no. And so I think the way we do that is by setting the stage that we're going to assert our provincial autonomy under the Constitution. We are going to assert the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and we're going to say we aren't going to implement and we're not going to enforce those laws. That's why I've proposed an Alberta Sovereignty Act, because there has to be some recognition that we are granted sovereign powers under our Constitution. I feel like the federal government and Justin Trudeau has been lawless since November of 2015 when they declared we're not allowed to develop our resources anymore. They're in violation of the Constitution. They're causing calamity and chaos and fleeing of investment dollars, and we've got to make sure that we restore some order here so that we can start attracting that investment back.
Now, people have been talking about sort of a fair deal for Alberta, going back to the firewall, talking about change, equalization shifts, all of this good stuff, but it feels like for the first time, even tonight, John Charest himself talking about a new sort of deal for Alberta. Does it seem for the first time in maybe a long time that we're not talking academically or theoretically, but there's change on the front for Alberta?
Completely. I think the fact that you've got a major federal leadership candidate recognizing we need an Alberta Accord, that shows that we've broken through on the message that Albertans, for as far as we're concerned, enough is enough. We've been pushed around too far. We've been taken for granted. You can't shut down our wealth generation and then also keep on asking us to fund the rest of the country through equalization to the share that we are, as well as interfering in the way that we deliver our programs. Enough is enough. So I think that the fact that we're now having this conversation allows us to reset the relationship with the country. We've been growing in economic clout and growing in population for a number of years now. At some point in the not too distant future, we're going to be the second largest economy economy and the second most populous province, and we need to be treated like a senior partner. And the only way that we're going to be treated differently is to stop acting like a junior player. We've got to take over the control of the same things that Quebec has, so that we'll be treated with the same respect that Quebec has. That'll change the country for the better, I think, for all of us.
Now, finally, I've been asking some other folks who they would support as leader for the UCP. I won't ask you that question unless you want me to. But are there leaders, at least here, given that we're at a federal event, that you think are really, their message resonates and that they're likely to be able to get this done on Alberta's behalf?
Yeah. Well, I think if we're talking federal, I think Pierre Poilievre, because he comes from here, he understands our aspirations. He's spent a lot of time in Reform Party politics before going into Conservative Party politics. I think he would be open to this radical decentralization and respect for provincial rights. Hearing as well, I always felt like Jean Charest would understand that too, having been a premier of Quebec, that he would understand that we had the same aspirations that they did. And so I'm glad to hear that as well. And I don't know as much about the other candidates, but those are the two main front runners, and I'm pleased to see that they're both kind of on the same page on that.
So I guess first question, first off, did you come here with someone in mind, someone you're thinking of supporting? And if you want to share that by all means, or if anyone changed your mind or maybe brought you over to their side a little bit with some of their comments tonight?
I arrived as a Jean Charest supporter. I'm still a Jean Charest supporter. At the same time, I really appreciated learning directly from the candidates where the other two stood on different issues.
And so what is it about Jean Charest's sort of platform that speaks to you personally?
Well, I grew up in Nova Scotia. I've worked and lived in Ontario, and now I'm here in Alberta. So I'm looking for a leader that has experience understanding the whole country, and I'm also looking for a leader that can be elected by the whole country.
Now, as a relatively newcomer to Alberta,
no,
you've been here for a while.
years.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So as an experienced Albertan, there's also a race going on for the leadership of the United Conservative Party. Is there a person that kind of has captured your interest on that front?
Not yet.
No.
I am a former MLA here in Calgary, in Alberta. And what I'm saying to the many friends that are approaching me from the many camps is I'll wait until after the federal leadership to make a decision on that one.
Do you think that there is a key issue or something that should be at the forefront of Albertans' mind in making that decision, even if it's not associated in your mind to a specific person yet?
Absolutely. What's the vision for Alberta? What's Alberta going to look like? We've had this great economic history. We have this great potential with our population, the education of our population, the economic drivers. Where's Alberta going to be in 20, 30, 40, 50 years? And I don't think I've heard a leader speaking about that yet.
Do you have a vision of where we should be going then?
Well, I would... So one of the things I think we learned through COVID is that education and economic drivers can happen all across the province. Now, today we have an internet outage, but my niece and nephew who lived in Nilda, Alberta, should have the same quality education, healthcare, and economic and job opportunities as my kids that grew up in Calgary. And so we have the technology, we have the mental ability to solve problems, so let's do that. Let's make Alberta the best place to live in Canada.
I suppose the question I would like to ask you, you've already sort of talked to some of our team here. There's also a race obviously going on for the provincial leadership for the United Conservative Party. On that front, is there a candidate that's sort of standing out to you, saying all the right things or addressing the right issues?
A little bit. I kind of lean a little bit towards Danielle Smith. I'm always tempted to call her Danielle Steele. But I'm not positive, so I still have my mind open. I was really pleased to have the Maverick Party reaching out to Albertans and encouraging them to get involved in the UCP leadership race. So I did purchase a membership, so I will be voting, so I'll have to pay a little bit more attention and make a decision soon, but I'm not decided yet.
And is there sort of a key issue you think that they need to address that's central to Alberta, the number one item that needs to be taken care of?
Number one, I think, would be to let us get on with it here, right? I think that no matter what other issues we end up coming back to in Alberta, it always sort of boils down to the fact that we don't have any autonomy to just go and get our work done, which is kind of the way, at least the way I've been born and raised here, is that, people just sort of get on with it, go to work, get the job done, and we just feel thwarted on that, on all fronts.
I just wanted to extend a massive thank you to the Western Standard for hosting this leadership debate and allowing us to be out here in force. It is great to see truly independent media holding these politicians to account and ensuring that they're answering tough questions that you really care about. Well, Albertans will soon be deciding who they want as the leader of the United Conservative Party moving forward. To make sure that you're informed and up to date, check in regularly at ucpleadership.com.